The Centers for Disease Control, some trends that we're dealing with in our country. We're the most overfed and undernourished country in the history of the world. The average person in the USA is consuming about 3,400 calories a day, which is phenomenal. It's the highest in the world. That was USA Today, January 22nd, 1986. You think it's better or worse today?
Worse.
Why is it worse?
Diversity.
Here are the trends. We've got 4-year increments on these, okay? 1988, they started keeping some of these trends, the CDC. The white states have no data yet. The light blue states, they figure there was less than 10% obesity in those states. The darker blue states, it was 10 to 14%. That's 1988. 1992, we've got a new category, 15 to 19% in the darker blue states. 1996, 4-year increments, folks. 2000, greater than or equal to 20%. There's 25%. Greater than 30%. Notice the southern states here, right? Fried chicken. I think, personally, I think it's sweet tea, and it's making its way north, so be careful. In part, great part. I really think for the medical folks, I think we're dealing mostly with hyperinsulinism, insulin resistance, metabolic syndrome, and I'm going to define that for you non-medical folks in just a minute. Walter Willett, okay. This is where I dropped the ball, and you guys are just going to have to bear with me because I'm going to read a quote. And I thought Ellen was copying something, and she thought I was bringing something. So we're going to ad lib, okay? Is that all right with you guys? Okay, this is a Walter Willett quote. I'm only going to read the left side of the page. The right side of the page is all Walter Willett's credentials, okay? Walter Willett is a medical doctor, PhD, from Harvard. He wrote the book Eat, Drink, and Be Healthy, okay? Pretty brilliant guy. He says the amount of disease that could be prevented through modifying one's diet, he says the potential impact of a healthy diet when you combine it with not smoking and regular physical activity is enormous. For example, our studies have shown that we could prevent about 82% of heart attacks, about 70% of strokes, over 90% of type 2 diabetes, and over 90% of colon cancer with the right dietary choices as part of a healthy lifestyle. The best drugs can reduce heart attacks by about 20 or 30%, yet we put almost all of our resources into promoting drugs rather than healthy lifestyle and nutrition. So if you need a little encouragement tonight about your objective and what you're doing, there's some good encouragement for you. And that is Walter Willett. And if you Google him, or you go to YouTube, you can pull some of this information up. And I will send that again to you, and we can get that quote to you guys if that's of interest, and anything else that we share here tonight. Talks a lot about inflammatory cytokines. Inflammatory cytokines are, if you sprain an ankle, there's good inflammation, there's not so good inflammation. You sprain an ankle, inflammatory cytokines, for all intent and purpose, is like a little Pac-Man that goes in and kind of cleans things up in the process of healing that ankle, right? That's a good visual, right? Well, guess what? We're producing diet-driven inflammatory cytokines that are attacking the body systemically throughout the body. And it can drive arthritis, it can drive heart disease, it can drive diabetes, it can drive dementia, and everything in between. So a cytokine storm is that diet-driven inflammation, a diet-induced pro-inflammatory state. With every bite we take, we're either inflaming or deflaming. In 2004, Time magazine came out with a front page, The Secret Killer, the surprising link between inflammation and heart attacks, cancer, Alzheimer's, and all other diseases. And what you can do to fight it. Journal of the American Medical Association, heart disease, diabetes, and obesity are inflammatory conditions. This is Gerald Reaven, 1989, Stanford University. He's the one who came up with the Syndrome X, metabolic syndrome, insulin-resistant theory. And it's a brilliant piece of work, and for those of you who've never heard about that, This is basically what he came to. He said that our health is much like an iceberg floating in the water. We can't see 4/5 of it, we can see 1/5 of it up above. But what's happened to the iceberg of Syndrome X? Syndrome X, like an iceberg, the symptoms are so common and obvious, yet the cause often remains hidden. Well, so what are the symptoms? The symptoms are inability to lose weight, or difficulty losing weight, high cholesterol, triglycerides, blood pressure, weight gain, disturbances in blood sugar, and the common denominator in all of it is hyperinsulinism, or insulin resistance, insulin imbalance. Here's another great piece here's a good visual. And again, I can send these out if you guys would like to print one of these out for your refrigerator. You know, we can do that. We can get that to you, okay? So this fella here, you know, he's got a little bit of an issue with his weight, but the metabolic syndrome, the cluster of conditions that occur in metabolic syndrome, with hyperinsulinism being the common denominator, includes everything from heart disease to lipid problems, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, dementia, some cancers, polycystic ovary syndrome, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Is this somewhat familiar to you guys? Okay. So the question is, are we hormonally clogging our bodies? Right? Now, if you have a sink, and that sink's in good operating condition, and you're putting good, clean, simple water through that sink, you can put almost as much water as you want in it, and it's going to drain out and work optimally, right? And the problem today is that 85% of the foods in any grocery store will hormonally clog our body. It raises insulin levels. You see, insulin, and I don't want to get too technical tonight, but insulin is the hormonal maestro of the body. It does a lot of things in the body. And its counterpart, glucagon, they work, insulin's at work or glucagon's at work. Insulin is the fat-storing hormone. Insulin tells your liver to produce cholesterol, because cholesterol is foundational in all of our hormone production in the body. So the body makes it about 80% of its own cholesterol. Insulin causes the body to retain fluid. So you know that bloat feeling that we get at times? That can be as a result of elevated insulin levels. And on and on. Well, if you think about single ingredient whole foods, vegetables, you guys ever eat vegetables and fruit before? You're going to hear it again tonight, okay? Because that's what the Lord intended for us, right? Things that you can pull out of the ground, things that you can pull off a tree, essentially things you can hunt and gather. Those foods are those foods that drive that vitalism, that healing, repairing, and restoring in the body. So we are literally living and dying at a cellular level. We're thriving or we're struggling at that cellular level. Is this interesting? So there's the clog sink, right? What happens? How do we get a clog sink? We're putting the wrong things in our sink, right? So the solution really is eat smarter, not less. Eat the foods that hormonally unclog our body. Focus on quality rather than quantity. That's it. If you want to write something down tonight, that's it. Focus on quality rather than quantity. Interestingly enough, when you get that, and by the way, glucagon, that opposing hormone to insulin, that's the fat-using hormone. We were designed to function in a feast or famine environment. The problem today is there's no more famine. Everything's at our fingertips. And then everything's refined. Not everything, but there's a lot of refined stuff out there. So if you think about a long ingredient list, those are the things you want to kind of slow down on. If it comes out of the center aisles, if it's manufactured, if it was made in a plant, if it's a plant, eat it. If it's made in a plant, don't eat it. So in our office, what we do is we focus on these foods primarily. And when I say meats, I kind of define those too. I'm talking, hormone-free, naturally raised, grass-fed beef, free-range chicken if we can. Get the best stuff that you can get. Because the problem is, a little compare and contrast, grass-fed versus grain-fed. You guys at all familiar with the difference? Mm-hmm. Familiar with that? In the 1890s, cattle ranchers began to feed their cattle grain. Their natural diet is grass, right? They're ruminants, okay? And grass is full of omega-3s, which, like fish oil, is anti-inflammatory. So that grass-fed beef is relatively anti-inflammatory. Whereas the same grains that are making us fat, sick, tired, depressed, and diabetic, and ill, and arthritic, and demented, are making the cows fat, sick, tired, depressed, and diabetic. But what the cattle ranchers realized was if they fed them grain, why would they do that, right? If they fed them grain, they fatten them up for processing within 2 years, as opposed to 3 or 4 years for a grass-fed animal. So it comes down to the money again. But that animal, when it goes to processing, is sickly. There's antibiotics, there's hormones that go in that animal as well. So those are things to think about. Lots of vegetables, some nuts and seeds, some fruit, little starch. We try to stay away from sugar. We really kind of focus on starch and sugar more or less in the practice. And when I stay away from grain and sugar, and I'm going to elaborate on the grain in a minute if we have time, I have way less pain in this banged up 56-year-old body. High fructose corn syrup. According to a report by the USDA, the use of high fructose corn syrup in the U.S. diet has increased from almost 11,000% from 1975 to 2005. Lisa's Japanese. High fructose corn syrup was invented in Japan. She had nothing to do with it. in the 60s. It hit our shores in 1975. I graduated from high school in 1976. Okay, and I was going to Fay Road and Terry Road Market and getting sodas and whatnot. But we were drinking sugar. We weren't drinking high fructose corn syrup. There's a difference. I told some of you guys I was going to do a Mountain Dew piece. Just briefly, I am not drinking this. I saw people look like, what in the world? This is a 20-ounce Mountain Dew. And we can pass this around, or you can come up here and take a look at it. But a chiropractic student friend of mine brought this into me. That's the sugar that's in a Mountain Dew, which is roughly about that much, okay, in a 20-ounce Mountain Dew. By the way, 2.5 servings. You get me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, do we know anybody that's doing the Dew? Okay. Servings per container. Serving size, 8 fluid ounces. Servings per container, 2.5. It's 2.5 servings per container. We got 31 grams of total carbohydrate in one 8-ounce serving of Mountain Dew. Your pancreas shudders when that Mountain Dew comes in. Your insulin level climbs dramatically. We're driving hyperinsulinism with this. Okay? Here's another byproduct of Mountain Dew, is teeth. So here we're experiencing the dew. It's a real problem. And that's one of the deceptions of big food. Okay? I understand there's some truth in labeling that's coming now, but you can guarantee they'll figure out a creative way to market us.